A few words about myself. I'm Ruslan Kusov. I work as a DevOps architect for SoftServe. I have about 9 years, almost 10 years of experience in IT. I started as a system administrator, network engineer, SRE engineer, and now I'm DevOps architect. And I'm also the Google Cloud Professional Certified Architect. And I think that I have enough practice and experience in all that stuff and can really help you with your problems. OK, so what are we going to discuss today? We are going to start from scratch, actually, from cloud journey inception. We will talk about how to become cloud native. What should we do for that? Why does infrastructure as code matter if we talk about cloud native solutions? Next, we'll do intro into Google Cloud Deployment Manager. It's a really cool service from Google, and I will tell you why. At the end, I'll show you a short demo about CI/CD integration with Deployment Manager, and at the end, supposed to have some conclusions and the questions from audience. And I would like to start with a question to you. So, do we have any people who tightly works with cloud? Any cloud? Any cloud? Oh, OK. Google Cloud in particular. Yeah, who? Oh, OK. So you are pretty familiar with that. And just last question. Who do you really think that he or she do everything in the right way? OK, so we still have self-confident people here. That's great. I can tell that you can be sure in this that you actually do everything in the right way, because Google continuously introduce new services, continuously provide you with new features. You have your own new experience. You have experience from your coworkers. You have experience from other companies. You visit a lot of conferences, and you understand that sometimes you do things in a way that's more applicable for you, and there is no actually the right way. And that's the main problem that we have about cloud journey and cloud journey migration. So when we start talking with our customers about cloud, they actually scared. They scared about cloud not because of cloud itself, but because of changes. Because they understand that in case of migration to the cloud, these changes will be significant. And they do not know how to operate with that cloud, how to operate with cloud APIs and so on. And at the beginning, actually, of this migration, you have a lot of questions. And before you start, you have this moment of clarity, yeah? You have questions, are we ready to go to the cloud? Should we worry about cloud migration? Are we aware of all potential risk of this migration? What cloud model should we choose? What service model should we choose? And a lot of questions, actually. And you should scared about cloud migration. You shouldn't scared about cloud migration, but you're scared because you understand that you should change the way how you work with infrastructure. So on the one hand, we have all the benefits that can be provided with clouds, like uptime, like managed services, like shared responsibility model, like cool features and stuff that available into the cloud. On the other hand, you still have all that fears. And I would reference to Google Cloud's migration journey and migration journey model, and it looks like baseball. So you have 3 bases, you have home plate, and you should do a home run, or you will be tagged and out of game. So you should pass through all that bases and achieve final result. You can see that you should start with proper assessment, continuous with planning and testing, perform migration, and at the end you have validation phase and confirmation. And that's the last phase is continuous. So you continuously improve your cloud. And that's why I'm pretty sure that even that people who answered that they are pretty familiar with cloud and do everything in the right way, they don't, because they still have a lot of chance, a lot of things to improve. Oh yeah, that's about my life actually. I started, as I mentioned, as a system administrator, and I think that it's like a great example, and this example can be extended from physical world to the cloud, actually, yeah? So I started as a system administrator, and I had a task from my team just to migrate all the equipment from all our offices to one server room. And I did this in that way, and that was wrong, because if I had been married on that time, I would definitely have gotten divorced. because, you know, I spent about whole my days, 24/7, I spent to fix all the issues that I had there in that data center. I did this without gathering all the requirements. I did this without checklist. I did this like simple lift and shift, and I have no plans for optimization. And that's the right way. So when you start with assessment, when you plan all the migration phases, build landing pods. It's important part of any cloud. Start with landing pods, so prepare all things that is required to start your migration. Run MVP, and finally optimize that solution. And with this actually approach, you'll have nights with the proper sleep. And to summarize everything, we can actually switch to the next question. Why does infrastructure as code really matter? So just imagine that were examples about physical devices, about servers itself, but what about virtual machines? So do they still have the same problems for the migration or not? Yes, they do. So, okay, you're ready to go to the cloud, you have your virtual machines, and you think that everything should be fine. So you just take your virtual machines from your data center, move to the cloud, and leave as it is. Okay, but it's not true. What about this infrastructure? It's still the same virtual machines, but you decided to take some advantages of Google Cloud. You decided to take that advantages actually by building auto-scaling group for your machines, because you want higher SLA, you want be better, you want your customer be satisfied with your solution. You decided to use cloud storage for that, just to store some kind of state data, some photos, some static files, and other materials. Also, you should create VPC, because without VPC you cannot launch any virtual machines. Of course, you have default VPC, but it's not a proper way, especially if you are going to build several environments and to do VPC peering or do VPN to your on-premises data center. You will have a problem in the final end. And you should build a proper VPC with proper SIDR range, with subnets, and you should configure cloud firewall rules. You should configure cloud DNS records and a lot of other stuff. And you should configure cloud routing or routing, it depends where you're from. But anyway, you should do all that stuff. And that's just for simple migration of your virtual machine to the cloud. What about that infrastructure? That's actually one of the real cases. So we have virtual machines, we have BigQuery, we have Kubernetes cluster here, and we have a proper organization structure. So with several projects, project per environment. So you should, before promote to production, you definitely ought to test your changes, your code somewhere. So you have dev environments, you have the stage environment like pre-production. You have CI/CD environment where you launch all stuff related to CI/CD, like Jenkins, like source repo, and so on. You have container registry in that account as well. So all that stuff, and you should build all the environments in a reproducible way. And if you do everything manually without any kind of infrastructure as a code, you will fail. Why? Because you actually cannot guarantee that you will repeat yourself on each environment with manual configuration. Because, for example, I started today, I did some kind of changes, I launched a virtual machine, and I assign its IP address to that machine, and that's it. And my coworker for the next day should reproduce this on production environment. And for example, he forgot to configure firewall rules for that machine. And that was a real case for me. So I spent about several nights after release trying to figure out what's going on with the environment. Everything should work, but no. And that was the issue with firewall rules. So that's the main problem of manual changes. And we have pets and cattle model. So we cannot treat with your environments in the clouds like you did this before with your on-premises data center. And these two pictures clearly illustrate this. So on the first picture, we have the cats. This is the real cat of friends of mine. And this cat, his name is Tima. It's like Ukrainian for Tom. He's pretty happy here. Yeah, he has a fancy dress and he has a New Year party here. You know, I just realized that even I didn't have either New Year's party or friend's address, but this cat had, yeah. And she cares about this cat. She cares when he is ill. I don't know, she put him, she just loved him, and that's it. And he is a member of family. The same with your virtual machines in your on-premises data center. So you care about that virtual machines. You care about each server. You know how it's named. Like, I don't know, like Jupyter, or it can be some kind of strawberry, raspberry, or something like that. So we named our servers in our own data centers, but not in clouds. In the cloud, you have the picture number 2. So you have a cattle concept. So that's cow, but you have SLA with your customers, how many milk you will provide to that customers at the end of the day. This is SLA for that service, for that cows. And you don't care when someone from this cow is dead or is ill, yeah. What's the reason for that? You still have this determined SLA, and you should operate with your cloud virtual machines in this way, following this cattle concept. You shouldn't care about how many virtual machines launched, how many containers. You should be focused only on service, on SLA, service level agreement with your customers. And what do we have here? We have actually 4 pillars for infrastructure as code concept. And the first one is avoid human error. So you should do everything in a predictable way. No manual changes. Automate all your infrastructure. Automate code validation. Do not repeat yourself in your code just to avoid, again, this human error. You should automate all repeated tasks because you do this day from day, and you will continuously do this in the future. And you should automate this type of tasks. You should follow all the cloud security practices because it's highly important. In clouds, we have a lot of questions about security in the clouds, about who is responsible for which part, and so on. And you can do this with infrastructure as a code. And finally, you should allow actually agility and flexibility for your environment. Okay, so Google Cloud Deployment Manager, this tool is actually the great tool probably to start with in a Google Cloud when we talk about infrastructure as a code. Especially for me, I started with Terraform, but I think that I was prepared for that. I had a lot of experience with code writing, with configuration management, and so on, and Terraform wasn't so difficult for me. But for the beginners, you definitely should start with Google Cloud Deployment Manager because it has clear concepts, and I will show you a little bit later. So, Google Cloud Deployment Manager, according to Google documentation, is an infrastructure deployment service that automates the creation and management of Google Cloud Platform resources for you. What are the key points of Deployment Manager? First of all, it's repeatable deployment. So it's like principles of idempotent principles. Yeah. So you should launch some piece of code, yeah, and at the end, with a 100% guarantee, you'll receive predictable result, the same result for each code launching. Next is template-driven. So you create templates for this code, and you reproduce the same templates through all the environments, and you have consistent environments for starting from test and finishing with production. Declarative language. So what does it mean? You just create description for your final infrastructure that you are going to achieve, and Deployment Manager will decide it for you how to achieve that final infrastructure and do this in a proper way with proper dependencies and so on. And finally, you will be focused on your application, only on your application code, not on infrastructure, because you will be sure that everything will work fine in infrastructure, in the same infrastructure for each environment. What about features? We have a lot of features that can be provided with Deployment Manager. The first one is actually parallel deployment. So you can launch deployments, and it will do several deployments in parallel time, actually, simultaneously. Deployment Manager, as I mentioned, has templates and schema files. Schema files is another great feature. So it's like some additional components for templates that allows you to describe how to use that template and just defines some default variables and protects customers from some unexpected usage of that template. Next is updates. So you can do updates with your deployment manager, but you should be careful about about the way of doing this, because for some resources, again, following the principles of immutable infrastructure, you cannot just update that resource. You should recreate that resource. And this is done on purpose because you should avoid any kind of configuration drift at the end, and be careful about that feature. Next one is inputs and outputs parameters. So you can use any kind of inputs and determine as variables, and use outputs for another models, and create a proper structure with dependencies like nested template structure, and reuse outputs from previous deployments to next deployments. Type providers, another cool feature of Deployment Manager. With type provider, you can actually choose any kind of API that has a proper description and meets the requirements, and integrate with Cloud Deployment Manager. So for example, if Cloud Deployment Manager cannot manage Kubernetes, but Kubernetes has this API that allows you to do this, you can integrate Kubernetes API to Deployment Manager with type provider. This feature is in beta, but anyway, you can try and use it. It's cool. References. Again, to allow dependencies between models, between configurations, between templates, actually, you can use these references. Preview mode. This important feature, especially for CI/CD pipeline, when you are going to launch and review what changes will be promoted to the environments. And that's why you definitely need this preview mode. It's like some kind of dry run. So you just run preview, verify that everything is OK and you agree with that changes, and after that, run updates, and this deployment will be updated or promoted to the environments from scratch. And console UI, it's a feature for fancy users, but OK, let's leave it there like a feature. That's pretty simple commands that probably will use with the deployment manager. So as I mentioned, it's creates, updates, cancel preview, describe, deletes, and preview mode as well. What about fundamentals? So with deployment manager, we have, first of all, configuration. So it's a set of resources that will be deployed to your environment. Resources itself. So it's like virtual machines, IP addresses, VPC, and other kind of Google Cloud resources. Resource contains name, like virtual machine or any other kind of name. Type, again, it's compute virtual machine, compute v1 instance you can see here. It contains properties. It's a set of parameters that can be provided to that machine, like boot storage, like source image, and so on. It contains also types. Yes, I mentioned about types. Yeah, OK. Another fundamental thing of deployment manager is templates. It can be Jinja 2 or Python templates. It's up to you, but I would recommend to start with Jinja 2 because Python is a little bit complicated, and with Jinja 2 you still have that YAML format, and you still have that kind of declarative format for the promotion. With Python, you should write your own code. And OK, yeah, it has more features, but still it's more complicated for the beginners. And manifest. Manifest you can review with a web UI, for example, and understand what's going on in case of any errors during deployment. And deployment itself, so it's set of configuration, it's a set of resources that will be deployed by that configuration. As I mentioned about Jinja templates, you have some features related to this. You have environment variables, you have loops, you have conditions. So again, comparing with Terraform, with another tool, we know that in Terraform, they introduced it actually for the Terraform 0.12 version that they will support loops and conditions. But for now, they are in beta, and that's why you have that benefits. You have that yeah, it's benefits comparing to Terraform to use Deployment Manager to have all that feature in your stack right now. Wow. Next, I would like to tell about directory and file structure. So this is a directory and file structure that we can propose for the beginners. Again, if you don't want to use Python, if you don't want to overcomplicate your environments, you should start with the Jinja 2 templates, and probably you'll have the same directory structure. And I will show you how it works in demo. But right now, I would like to say that what can we hear? What can we see here? So we can see that we have root directory with deployments. We see several subdirectories. Each of that directory contains Jinja templates, contains schema files, and contains configuration YAML files divided by environments. So, for example, in production environments, we have variables related to production environments, properties related to production environments. In stage, we have the same for stage environments. And when we launch this in our CI/CD pipeline, we just apply changes for production or for stage using either prod or stage file. And in a root directory, we also have a changelog file. Jenkins file can be skipped. It's only for Jenkins for this demo. README file and version. Why these files are important? So in version, you store the version of these deployments that is applied to your environments, and I will show in my demo how you can operate with that version and why it's so important for you. In changelog, you have all the changes because, for example, when you have security audit, when you have PCI DSS compliant product, and you have QSA that has his own questions about your environments, you can show him this changelog and tell that, you see, all the changes were done according to this changelog, according to these Jira tickets or any other type of requests. And we have version file that's supported, and we can switch version to version just to show you that everything is OK. And with version file, we can create a tag for our branch in Git repository and do a proper rollback in case of any issues with our environments, and we really need that rollback. OK, so CI/CD for deployment manager. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible, actually. That's a quick answer for my question. So, what is CI/CD? CI, you are pretty familiar with that. We have continuous integration, and the end of the continuous integration is artifact stored somewhere in the registry, in the Artifactory. For deployment manager, we can have the same. So we can have a code repository. We can have code review procedures with at least 2 reviewers who will review all the changes. After that, the changes can be merged to production and launched in front of sandbox environments in Google Cloud. And what you will achieve after that? You will achieve, first of all, with the preview mode, you can control all the changes that will be provided to your environments. And also, you can track, you can launch actually tests, integration tests in front of that environment. For example, in our cases, we use inspect framework for that with the GCP integration. So we just describe tests and launch that test in front of that sandbox environment during CI part of the pipeline. What about continuous delivery and continuous deployment? So with continuous delivery, we still have someone who should push the button, who should approve our promotion to the production environment. With continuous deployment, we don't have this person. But with continuous deployment, we should guarantee that everything is OK. Everything should be covered with tests. So inspect is a must here. Security testing is a must here as well. You can create your own security test writing on Go language or Python language and run the test in scope of this pipeline to test your infrastructure for security issues, or you can use some third-party solutions for that. So it means that infrastructure as a code is not only about automation. It's also about source control, versioning, audit trail for all changes, as I mentioned, testing and verification, collaboration for infrastructure management. So now, this is not one person who do all that stuff. So we have several people who manage that, and you can track and control all the changes. And you have documentation. Documentation is an important part because documentation in a classic format, in a Confluence or in some doc files, it can be outdated. But code will never be outdated. It will ever be up to date. So that's a great feature as well. OK, so what about demo? And I have, for the demo, can we switch, please, to my demo machine? Oh, yeah, that's great. So for my demo, I decided to show you how it looks in Jenkins. So we have a Jenkins pipeline for that code that I showed you previously. And I already launched this pipeline, and I have some results. So let's verify what do we have. So first of all, we have several projects. One project is for CI/CD. So in this CI/CD project, I have my Jenkins managed by deployment manager as well. I have stage environment and I have production environment. And this environment is separated by projects. What about code? OK, let's close these extra files for now. I have, as I mentioned, yep, just a moment, please. Yeah, that's great. So I have this directory structure. So I have VPC-related deployments and templates and configuration, instance group, and changelog, README file, and version file. So in this demo, I'm going to deploy VPC with the proper firewall rules, with proper subnetwork, and launch managed instance group in that VPC. And on that managed instance group, let's see on instance template, I have some simple site, my biography, and let's see how it looks like after the first deployment. OK. OK, that's awful. I think that you shouldn't have seen this actually, because after this demo, I have no chance to be promoted to HTML designer position. OK, let's do something with that. So you can see that I have information about myself, and I have version that's actually provided by property from my deployment and provided by that version file. And I have environment. So I have this for stage environment, and I have for production environment as well. So let's make some changes to this code. I will cheat, if you don't mind. I have some helper for that changes. Yep. So first of all, I would like to update my photo because it's out of date. I'm young and happy there. Note about my current state. OK, and do some updates with the color. So let's start with this part, and yeah, with the body color as well. So yeah, OK. What should I do next? First of all, I should update version. Now it's version 1.18, and again, I follow like semantic versioning, so I do some kind of patches here, so that's why I update patch version. And I should update changelog file. So in changelog file, I track all my changes according to tickets that I have, for example, in Jira. So let's pretend that I have Jira here. Yeah. 1.18 version and ticket number 19. OK, updated index.html page. Yeah, that's correct. That's all the changes that I did here. OK. Let's commit these changes. Don't do this in your real life, because I will commit to master branch. Yeah, OK. We are on the same page. It's great. OK. What about message for this commits? Yep. And git push. Yeah, we are done. OK. What do we have here? So for this demo, we used the cloud source repository, and a new feature related to this cloud source repository announced recently is SSH support. So previously, cloud source repository supported only IAM. So IAM policies can be integrated, and you can use this repository only with the gcloud. But now you can use in a pretty familiar way, like you use any kind of other Git repositories with SSH keys. So you just can import this SSH key and use in a pretty familiar way. But anyway, this feature is still in beta, so it means that it will be updated, definitely will be updated, added probably code review, because it is missed right now. We don't have code review. But I think that this feature must be here, because it's quite important to have that code review model, to have a whole pipeline tools in your in scope of GCP environment. OK, so what do we have with our Jenkins? Yeah, you see that we have webhook launched and we have a pipeline. Let's see console log. So this is our pipeline. You see all that steps. So first of all, we update VPC, next instance group, and wait for user response to promote to production. So I have continuous delivery here. Unfortunately, I have no inspect test in this pipeline because, as I mentioned, inspect test makes sense to do in front of sandbox account, and we have not enough time for that. Sorry. So. But if you wish, you can ping me, drop me a line in LinkedIn, and I will show you this like in during brief call. So it's okay. Yeah, let's see console log. So what do we have here? As you see, we have first of all review. So it's some kind of preview mode, dry run, and after this preview mode, you can see what resources will be updated and what version will be provided to these resources. And here is updates for our stage environment, and we have completed updates for all resources. And you can see that we have outputs here. So in outputs we have a front-end IP address provided from our load balancer. As I mentioned, you can use outputs in your deployments, in your templates, and reuse this output for your particular cases. Yeah. So what do we have right now? We are waiting for response. Promote to production. Yeah, let's promote this to production. Okay, so we have these updates on stage. Let's wait. Yeah, it takes some time because we just relaunched our instance. So as I mentioned earlier, for some resources we cannot launch properly update because it means that at the end we'll receive configuration drift. And to avoid this and to follow immutable infrastructure principles, we should recreate that resources, like in this case. So we just recreated resources in instance group, launched it new, and terminated the old one. Yeah, let's wait for updated sites. And meanwhile, let's see for our pipeline. Yeah, we are waiting for production updates and for finalizing this pipeline. Yeah, just a moment. Let's see what will happen here. Oh, yeah, by the way, while we're waiting, I will show you that we have tags, and the last tag is 0.1.17. So I suppose to have 0.1.18 tag after release to production environment. So as I mentioned, using that tag, we can roll back to the previous version in case of any issues on our environments. Okay, site cannot be reached. Let's wait why. Okay, just a moment, please. Yeah, first of all, yeah, we have success pipeline. We have success, yeah, and we have a new tag, as I mentioned, 0.1.18. Okay, let's see that tag. Let's update our cloud source repository. Yeah, you can see this tag. So switching to that text, you can check all the changes promoted to the environments, and you can actually roll back to the previous version. Another cool feature that we have all the changes mirrored in admin audit logs, so it means that that logs can be used to track all the activities with your environment and avoid any kind of unexpected changes from someone except deployment manager. So you can trigger and you can launch any kind of notification for any problems with the API calls for your environment. So again, it's reasonable from security points of view, so you can guarantee that only deployment manager and only Jenkins user can perform any updates to your environment, and that's cool. Yep, now it's better. And we have some colors here. We have updated photo. This is me awarded as the best DevOps engineer in the UK last year. I'm happy here, and I'm done. OK, and you see that we have updated version 0.1.18, and probably we'll have the same for production. Yeah, let's wait for production. Yeah, and you see that this production environment. So can we get back to our slides, please? Oh, yeah. Let me draw some conclusion about that, summarize everything that we have. So, first of all, plan your infrastructure, plan this in a proper way, because without that, you will have no family, no wife, you will sleep at your work. That's true. Test cloud infrastructure like software. So again, you can create code for your infrastructure. You can actually do everything that you do with the application code repo with a cloud infrastructure repo. Start your GCP journey with Deployment Manager. As I mentioned, it's more confident and easier way to start than Terraform, and it has a lot of benefits like loops for Jinja templates, like if conditions and so on, and like type providers that allows you to integrate any other APIs to your deployment manager. Next, follow all deployment manager best practices. Google actually has a lot of documentation related to deployment manager, so just review all that documentation. If you have any questions, you can ask us. We, as a SoftServe team, will provide you with our own best practices. We had a lot of headache, and we shattered our legs on our journey to the cloud, and we know how to treat with that, how to handle that. What next? Remember to plan scalability. So remember that your infrastructure will not be finalized on that, as you remember that picture with my server room, on that one stage with one server. You will be grown, and it means that you should be scalable. Automate the creation of project and resources. Yeah, by the way, with the Cloud Deployment Manager, you can not only automate infrastructure resources creation, but you can also automate project creation. So any type of IAM entities, projects can be created with Deployment Manager as well. And remember about CI/CD for Deployment Manager. It's highly important. Okay, guys, your feedback is greatly appreciated. Please complete session survey in a mobile app. I use Next resources for this. So first of all, it's Google official documentation, and also Last resources is highly recommended for you because this is a GitHub repository with samples, with deployment manager samples created and managed by Google. So it's really useful, especially for newbies like we were, and for professional guys as well. And thank you for attending this session. We are SoftServe team. We will glad to see you at our booth number 1453. So please join us, ask your questions, and contact me via LinkedIn, email. I'm happy to answer to all your questions. Thank you very much.